Although we are sponsoring this, we have a couple of guest panelists. So let's go ahead and get to the introductions of our guest panelists. All right. Before that, this is our agenda. So after I go over the agenda, we'll introduce the panelists, and actually they'll introduce themselves so that you're aware of who they are and what it is they do. And if you would like to follow up with them in any way, you'll be able to do that as well. We have a video that illustrates some of the dangers and warning signs of teen dating violence. We also have a number of questions that we've structured ahead of time to be able to ask the panelists. But your questions are the most important. So if you have any questions along the way as someone is presenting, we have one of our counselors, Mr. DeVal Kent, and he'll introduce himself in a moment. He's going to be facilitating the chat. So you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or as you're familiar with Blackboard, you can raise your hand and we'll be sure to get to your questions. So we definitely want to hear from you and make this as interactive as we can. After we hear from our panelists, then we'll take any additional comments or questions that you may have from the audience, and then we'll conclude with an evaluation. I do have a link to a survey, and so I'll be sure to put that in the chat, and if you could fill that out after the program or before you leave the program, we would greatly appreciate your feedback so that we can continue to do these programs and focus on the topics that are of interest to you all. Okay, so with that, last thing is please keep your microphone muted unless you have a question. Also, for presentation purposes, the cameras will be off unless the person presenting would like to be on camera, then that's not a problem. But the slides are also here for your viewing information as well. So feel free to take notes and again, ask any questions that you might have. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. With the introduction of the panelists.
Hello, everyone.
So the first person that we have, on our panel is Miss Ashley Greer. She will be introducing herself following Miss Arnita Shelton. We will also hear from Lieutenant Barbara Smith. You won't really hear from me. That's me, Dr. Danielle LaShore Bryan. I'm the moderator, already introduced myself. And then also Mr. DeVal Kent. So with that, please, Ms. Greer, would you feel free to introduce yourself?
Sure. So good afternoon.
Tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley Greer, as Dr. LaShore Bryan said. Thank you, Dr. LaShore Bryan, for the opportunity to be here today. I am the outreach coordinator for the Prince George's County Family Justice Center. The Family Justice Center is an initiative of the Circuit Court. We serve as a multi-service center for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and elder abuse. All services we provide are virtual right now and free of charge to anyone who is going through any of those situations.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Ms. Greer. We so appreciate you being with us here today. The next person who will introduce themselves is Miss Arnita Shelton.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, Miss Nurse Arnita.
Oh, okay. Okay, I wanted to make sure you heard me. You know what I've been going through. My name is Arnita Shelton, and I am the campus nurse at Prince George's Community College, partnered with this wellness center. And let me see, I'm a registered nurse. I've been a registered nurse over 40 years, and I am also a sexual assault forensic examiner nurse. I've been that for 17 years, and that I do rape exams for PG County. So that is some of my many hats. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurse Arnita. Appreciate you being with us today, and we'll be hearing from you a little later. Lieutenant Barbara Smith.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Lieutenant Smith. I've been with Department of Public Safety for about almost 10 years now. I have 15 years of experience, and I was just recently appointed the Clery officer. Thanks for having me.
Ooh,
Ooh,
exclusive. Congratulations, Lieutenant Smith.
Thank
Wow,
you.
that's great. That's great. Okay. Okay. That's me, the moderator. I'm, again, one of the counselors in the Wellness Center. And so if at any point you are interested in seeking out counseling services, feel free to contact us, 301-546-0093, or counseling services, one word, at pgcc.edu. The next person we will introduce is my colleague, another counselor in the Wellness Center, Mr. DeVell Kent.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone is well. I am one of the counselors here at Counseling Services, so I'm just really happy to be here and ready to get this program underway. I'll also be working the chat side as well. But, thank you all.
Okay, great. Thank you, DeVell. Okay, so now that you know who everyone is and the specialties we have, let's get into the meat of what we're going to be discussing today. So the first thing we want to consider is really the prevalence of teen dating violence. And actually, before we even get to this slide, I want to be clear about the population that we're talking about. Even though we're saying teen, much of what we're saying applies to young adult relationships. Okay, and particularly this slide here looks at the age at the first experience where an abuse situation happened within their relationship. And so as you can see, 11 to 17, that starts some of the teen years, but then it continues with the 18, 19 as well. And so I wanted to be very clear that this goes beyond the 13 to 18 age period, that it does extend. And so with that background, let's hear from some of our panelists in terms of what they know to be the occurrence or the prevalence of teen dating violence and just, in fact, what it is. So can we start with you, Ms. Greer?
Sure. So your slides are are just so accurate and on point. A lot of times we don't think that teen dating violence is common because of the age group that it involves. And pretty much teen dating violence, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but it is simply that pattern of behavior that includes any form of aggressive behavior or abusive behavior that is displayed in an intimate partner relationship in this context. And I think one of the important things to understand about dating violence and domestic violence in general is that it's always about power and control. It's always about someone exhibiting power and control over the other person in that relationship. So I hope that answered the question. I'm not sure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It answered it very well. And in fact, if anyone else would like to chime in around that definition, please do so at this time.
Hi, can I jump in? I just want to say her answer was right on point, but also, it's a twofold, because sometimes when this happens in with young teens, it actually happens in front of other teens. So, other teens in that age group, they witness this. and it's very important that if you see it to speak up and say something, but your slide is very accurate and on point.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. And thank you for bringing, oh, please go on. I hear another comment.
Yes, this is Arnita, and also I have found when I do a lot of teams, and what they say is that they didn't realize that was what it was, because most of them have told me that the guy has told them, that it's okay, that he loves her, and don't tell anybody about it. So I think it happens a lot, but we don't know about it because they don't tell anyone.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. And with that, Nurse Arnita, I'm going to see if I can bring up the video that illustrates some of what we're talking about. Ms. Greer, was there something you wanted to as well while I look for the video?
Yes, there is something. I think Nurse Arnita just brought up a really great point. Is in some ways, teen dating violence has kind of become normalized, and that is a societal issue and a cultural issue. And I would even go as far to say it's a issue within the family. We have seen teen dating violence, or we've seen domestic violence in our families, and those are the kind of behaviors that we tend to pattern in our own relationships. And from our work at the Teen Empowerment Program at the Family Justice Center, we're seeing teens model aggressive and abusive behavior simply because of what they've seen from their parents, and even what they're seeing projected from images of music videos and things like that. So in a way, the biggest problem is that we're kind of normalizing violence in relationships.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And so what that does then in the normalizing is that we see it in various images throughout our culture. You mentioned music videos, but and no buts there. There's also social media and the way in which relationships are portrayed, particularly, unfortunately, with some of our celebrities and media stars who our teens might want to pattern themselves after. So thank you for bringing that up. And while that has been raised, can anyone speak to the role of social media within relationships at this time, how it might be used nefariously, for example?
I guess I'll jump in. Social media is really a big thing right now. We're all living in this digital space. And so some relationships are actually blooming online, or they're starting online, and then others, social media, we're spending a lot more time on social media. So it's very easy to kind of miss or overlook the fact that abuse can take in the form of social media, that abuse can take place in the form of someone trying to control you through the use of technology. And so that's something to also be aware of. Then it's also to be mindful of, just because something is projected on social media, that is not necessarily the standard of what a healthy relationship looks like. I think it's so important for us to realize that social media at the end of the day is just a highlight reel. And so even though this is quote unquote relationship goals for someone else, really understand and identify, is that what I want in a healthy relationship? Is that goals for my relationship standard? So don't allow social media to be what is a deciding or the determining factor for relationship goals for you, because a lot of what we're seeing is not healthy at all.
Excellent point.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Would you like to say more, Devel?
Sure, absolutely. I think the one thing that a lot of people forget is that social media is created for entertainment. And so a lot of things that you see on entertainment, a lot of things that you see on social media, to Ms. Greer's point, isn't really the status quo or the norm. So, when you want to measure your relationship and measure your interactions, it has to be based on how things are making you feel. Do you feel autonomous? Are you feeling intimidated and things like that. And especially with this whole social media using text messaging and things like that, it really speaks to that psychological aggression that happens that could be contributed to the whole dating violence piece, because dating violence and abuse isn't always physical. It isn't always physical. And utilizing the devices and the different venues through social media really allows more harm to happen across, more spread out, and allows it to happen uncovered or unrecognized, if you will.
Good point. Good point. Yes. And certainly the pandemic contributes to that kind of behind the scenes that might be occurring, or even again the pandemic masking the type of harassment that might predate the actual abuse, the actual physical abuse. So harassment in terms of text messages, harassment in terms of emails, harassment in terms of flooding your electronic boxes with garbage, or even sending things that are very unflattering, very unhealthy out to others. That type of behavior now is undercover because we're all inside or we're in our homes. So if that is taking place, please know that that's not normal. It's not right. And in some cases, it can be illegal. We just did a presentation on stalking where that came up, that type of behavior can be prosecuted. So to your point, DeVal, in terms of slides are a little slow, in terms of the abuse not being solely physical, we have a slide here that illustrates that there can be 1, 2, 3, 4 categories that might constitute abuse or harassment within a relationship.
It looks like we also have a question. All right. Let's go ahead and see what's going on in there. It says, outside of social media, how do you know what a healthy relationship is? For instance, what you're seeing growing up more real than what social media glamorizes.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So, DeVal, you had started to speak on this. Did you want to continue with that, or did someone else want to jump in? Okay.
I mean, I could definitely. I mean, we could spend a whole session on healthy versus unhealthy relationships. So, without hogging the whole microphone up, I'll just say that, when you're in a relationship and you feel like you are being held hostage, you feel like you are being forced to do things against your will, if you are feeling intimidated, if you are, feeling withdrawn and feeling made to do things for your partner, then you know that you're not in a healthy relationship. Healthy relationships should be based on trust, respect, proper communication, and a host of other things. But so if you feel in this relationship that things are happening to you that are hurting you, then that's another indication that you're not in a healthy relationship, because healthy relationships enhance, they don't hurt. So if you're being spoken to in a negative manner, in a denigrating manner, or if someone is making you feel less than in their language, if they're being forceful with you, if things that, are happening in a relationship that's essentially tearing you down and not building you up, then that lets you know you're in a negative or unhealthy relationship. And if there are a bunch of bad habits that are happening in the relationship, not necessarily being forced upon, but just being introduced, there are bad habits that could happen in relationships that would constitute an unhealthy relationship as well. So if things that are happening to you or that you're experiencing are making you feel negative more so than positive, then that's an indication. You know, if you're feeling threatened in your relationship, that's a red flag and an indication that things aren't the most healthiest. If you find yourself arguing all of the time and you're not able to communicate, you know, in a healthy manner, in a loving, in an endearing manner, and you feel as though you're never being heard, then those are some other indications that would make you want to question whether this relationship is healthy or not. If you are being
And
physically touched in any way that is unacceptable to you or unwanted by you, then you definitely want to not think about whether it's healthy or not. You want to remove yourself and make plans to remove yourself from that relationship.
good point. All good points. Yes. Yes.
And that, when we were on the media session, a lot of the young men and women, because it's not always men with the violence.
Thank you, Nurse Arnita. Yes, that's right.
There are women too. So whoever is doing the violence part, giving a gift seems to be a real important part for the young lady or the young man. So I've had a lot of clients that are coming there with a fake fur coat. She'll probably think is real. And she'll say, he loves me because he bought me this coat. And she got one rose and a sweater. And they are intrigued by the gifts from the people, from the person that's abusing them. And that happens quite a lot. They buy them gifts to get them to do what they want. Send them to get their hair done and their nails. So that does happen a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good.
I see a hand.
I see.
Okay.
Go right ahead. Go ahead, Deval. We're a great tag team.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Well, I'll share a video because I just feel more comfortable showing my face.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, it feels weird not showing my face.
Of course. Not a problem.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So everything you guys have said really hit hard, because I was in a relationship with someone who was providing me with everything, but there were times when it just felt wrong. Like the person has a couple times threatened to kill me and then themselves, just like a couple times, and I'm realizing that that's not normal and that I think it's a way of abusing me. I'm not really sure.
You're right.
Yeah. I think
Sure.
so.
Yes, Sydney.
That's a form of manipulation. Oh, please go right ahead, Nurse Arnita.
Yes. Oh, Sydney, first of all, I just appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad that you're here to say that.
Thank you.
Because some of them saying that they do mean it, but for real, a lot of times it's their way, them saying, I'm going to kill you. They do that. They say that quite a lot, especially to smaller kids, because they really don't want nobody to tell. A 5-year-old, they really trying to keep them quiet. But by him buying you the gift, and I know you liked them, but when he bought you a gift, he had to do something or say something or act a way to show him that you like the gift. And it just goes on and on and on. But I really appreciate you even telling your story. And I'm glad that you're here to tell the story. And I'm glad I'm glad you realized that it was wrong. Because a lot of they just go on. Oh, they know it's wrong, but they like the gift and the attention. So thank you for your self-esteem and realizing it was wrong and got away. Thank you, Sydney.
We also have another question out there, but I just want to, before we answer address the question, I just wanted to shadow Nurse Arnita and Dr. Danielle's point to you that you're absolutely right. That isn't normal. That isn't right. And to have removed yourself from that relationship is probably the greatest decision that you could have made. And it's another thing that we haven't really talked about the art of manipulation and making you feel guilty and making you feel that if you leave me, then, you will do harm to the other
Yeah.
person, which kind of keeps you tied in. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, but I want to give the student the platform to open. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, it's more of a like a feedback or comment on what Sydney was saying. I can relate to her, so she's not alone in the sense of her ex saying he would kill her or kill himself. One of my first I considered serious relationships, and I was like 21, so I wasn't really a teenager, but he had bipolar, BPD, basically. And he would use that reverse psychology to guilt me into staying because I wouldn't want him to kill himself. So I just wanted to let her know that she's really not alone.
Yeah.
But I did get out of it.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes. And to validate that, in fact, yes, manipulation can be abusive. If someone threatens to harm themselves, or I think I might be dating myself, but there's that Lauryn Hill song, that talks about if I want to leave, then you're going to tell me you're going to hurt yourself. And, that song is very real in terms of the manipulation that people will use as a form of, but I need you, but I love you, appealing to our sense of compassion. But it can also be very detrimental for the other person, and feeling guilt and feeling shame because you don't necessarily want to tell other people you're in this situation. So there are some also feelings that come up for the individual who's being manipulated.
Absolutely. There was another comment that I wanted to read off and could possibly spark some feedback. It says there, but sometimes people can feel. It says sometimes people can feel afraid to reject the gift, fearing the abuser will explode.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that tells me that you got to know your situation, right? One size does not fit all in terms of we're telling you, oh, you need to just not take that. We don't know your situation.
Right.
And so, there are people who refuse to leave abusive relationships because they know if they leave, their dog is going to be left behind. And what's going to happen to that dog? For some people, a dog is like a child. And so it becomes very difficult to make that decision of, I know he's going to harm the thing I love, and yet I have to protect myself. So the manipulation can come in many forms. And just to be aware of it, that it might start off very small. Well, if you love me, you do this. Well, you said you love me, so why aren't you doing this? That's very small. It can start off. I think we're all folks who are old enough to understand this. It can particularly show itself within a sexual environment or a sexual format. If you love me, you do this.
Yeah,
that is.
absolutely.
Excuse me. Can anyone mute themselves? We're getting some feedback. And so if that's going on within your relationship, please know that it is not healthy, and that it is not something that you want to carry on as a pattern into other relationships.
We have another hand raised. Miss Murray, you
Great.
now have the floor.
All right.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be a part of this session. So a couple of years ago, I went to a session with Channel 4. They had a panel, They had
Uh-huh.
a panel, and it was real interesting because hold on, trying to get my mic to work. It was interesting because it talked about the different things as far as like the physical violence, sexual violence, psychological aggression, and all of that. So a lot of times it does start as what do you say, the manipulation. So it
Mhm.
doesn't always start out physical. Mine did.
Mhm.
Mine was always physical. But it doesn't always start out physical. And then the lady that was married to the DC sniper, she was there and she talked about how the system tends to fail women. You know, we report it,
Mhm.
they don't I guess look at it at first. So it's kind of like being abused again. It's kind of like being abused again. Just like someone who's been raped, they don't want to report it because they feel when they get on the stand, they're going to be raped again. So I just,
Right.
encourage, yeah, and it is hard. And I've spoken to people about it because I used to
Mhm.
be that same person that said, oh, she must love getting her butt kicked because she's still there. Once you've been in those shoes, you realize how hard it is for that individual to get out, especially like you said, if they have
Yes.
children or pets. And what interested me
Yes.
was last year when Corona started, there was a commercial. I watch a lot of TV. There was a Purina commercial. And I can't remember if it was during domestic violence month or not, but at any rate, there was a Purina commercial that, like, if you bought their food, a certain percentage went towards domestic violence because they realized, like you said, we don't want to leave our pets. And so, every purchase you made, some portion went towards domestic violence because we feel that if we leave and we leave our dog or our cat or whatever, something's going to happen to it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so,
Okay.
yeah, so, yeah.
Mhm.
So I
Well,
just
thank you,
encourage
Miss
us
Curry.
to recognize it.
Mhm.
And as the saying goes, if you see something, say something.
Okay. Excellent.
We have one
Excellent.
more question out there, Dr. Danielle.
Go right ahead. Okay.
It says, why do you
Can we
think...
please mute?
Yeah, there is a lot of feedback.
Thank you. All right. Go right ahead, Deval.
It says, why do you think the reasons why many people consider violence within a relationship to be normal?
Mm. Mm. Can we bring in Ms. Greer for that?
Sure.
I think she had touched upon it a little earlier.
Sure. And I think that's an awesome question, but I also think it's a very layered question. And so you can look at it as being one of the biggest reasons I can say being in this field of work is that one of the reasons why we tend to normalize violence within a relationship is simply because we don't talk about it. And we don't have a lot of conversations about domestic violence. We don't have a lot of conversations about teen dating violence. It's just not something that we bring up often. And even today, in the last 30 years, we begin to see that there are many different forms of abuse. It was said within the first 5 minutes of today's conversation, abuse is not just physical. And so a lot of people are in these relationships, are in these situations, and the abuse is not physical. And we have to change the narrative. Just because you can't see my scars, just because I don't have physical wounds, it does not mean that I'm not being abused. There's emotional abuse, there's verbal abuse, there's the technological abuse. There's so many different things that are happening in these relationships, and we tend to normalize it simply because because we're not talking about it. And then it also goes back to that cycle of abuse. If this is all that I've ever been exposed to, if I saw my aunt go through this, my dad go through this, and that's all that I've been exposed to, there's a high chance that I am going to continue in that cycle because this is all that I know. This is all that I've been exposed to. I didn't get to go to PGCC and have this conversation or be in this panel discussion, and this is all that I know. And then there's also a matter of some victims tend to become conditioned to the abuse. Like, I've been experiencing this for so long. Maybe this is the best it's ever going to be. Maybe this is really what a relationship looks like. I mean, most of the time he's good to me. Most of the time she's good to me. You know, every once in a while this abuse may happen and we tend to get conditioned to it. So those are some initial reasons why we tend to normalize abuse or violence within relationships.
Excellent. Excellent. And to your point, we saw earlier a screen that looked at the prevalence in terms of the first incidents with women. This particular slide looks at the first incidents of violence from a male point of view. And what's really telling here are the ages in which this first time experience is occurring. So to your point, Ms. Greer, if we're able to educate individuals about what healthy relationships should look like and what isn't normal for you to feel and to go through at that 11 to 17 age, we might prevent then those numbers in that 18 to 24 age perhaps to shrink a bit. And even in the subsequent ages. And so that is part of why we're doing this in terms of trying to meet our students where they are early in their development so that you have some guidelines moving forward as you continue to grow and mature into relationships. And I think I saw a hand, Abel.
Yep, let me lower that, and you now have the floor.
Thank you. I agree that it is conditioned. I actually just learned that myself about a year ago. I wasn't aware that, I knew I was going through mental and verbal abuse, but it's not until someone pointed out to me that I was even defending the abuser, and I was in awe. I couldn't even believe, because I would always be like, how come women or men defend their abusers? And then I became that person without even knowing it.
Very interesting. Is it Anissa?
Anicia.
Anicia. Oh, that's so pretty. Okay. Yes, Anicia. Very, very good point. And so can you just give us an example in terms of what it is that you said that seemed like you were defending the person? What are some of the phrases that you would tell yourself or tell other people?
It's because I love him.
Okay.
Like things like that I care about the person.
Okay.
And I guess I would rely on the good memories.
Okay. All right. Okay. And so thank you for sharing that. First of all, thank you for sharing that, because I think some of your classmates need to hear that. That, well, he hit me, but it was like 9 months ago, so it's no big deal. But the fact that it is there, from what I'm hearing you say, then kind of sets the tone. And even as Miss Murray was saying, even though she talked about it being physical from the get-go, she did still say that it started out as very slow. So these are the things that we need to pay attention to. And I see a couple of hands, DeVal.
Yep, absolutely. I just wanted to make one quick statement, and for the audience, and just to the courageous individuals that have been sharing their truth. You won't have physical without a component of a psychological abuse in there. that ingredient is what
They go hand in
helps
hand.
it to continue the abuse. There's definitely a psychological piece to there, so much so to make the victim feel as though that they are the one that are perpetrating harm to the actual perpetrator. And so
Okay.
again, to share your truths is very courageous of you all, and I'm just honored and grateful for you all. With that being said, Miss Mary, you got it. The floor is open.
So I dated my ex-husband when I was 14. But even in that, I always thought that I would be immune to some things, like, oh, I'll never be in a relationship like that. And so he and I lost touch, and we reconnected when I was in like my mid 30s. And, you know, I was hoping he had changed. You know, hey, we grew up. I mean, I changed, you know, so I thought he had changed. And he and I had conversations, and I told him, you should probably go and talk to somebody, because what I realized from that is, number one, his dad abused his mom. His mom left his dad and remarried. And like I told him, he had something to prove to the man that married his mom. And he could never figure out like what happened. And by the time he wanted to talk, both of his parents had developed Alzheimer's. So it's like, how do you like talk to them? And he just like would not go and get help. And I just think the more we better educate ourselves, not only can we help ourselves, but we can help others. So again,
Yes.
I'm so glad to be a part of this session.
And we are thrilled that you joined us today. So thank you so much. I see that I want to be cognizant of the time. It's 1:15, and we do end at 1:30. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't asked any question, or if you want to make a comment, please do so at this time. Also, the evaluation link has been posted in the chat. Please click that and give us some feedback about what we're doing here. I hear someone.
Yes, hi, it's Arnita.
Okay.
I wanted to speak a little bit about the age group, the younger one, I think it was 11 to 15. We as people or parents, or I'll say parents, or somebody that's very close or has permission, we need to talk to the younger children. Like, I used to be a Girl Scout troop at my, a Girl Scout leader at my church, and I had daisies. They were 5 years old. And for the 19 years I was a Girl Scout leader, I taught good touch, bad touch. And we had scenarios about somebody come getting them candy and getting in the car, and what would you do? And, you know, Uncle Tommy rubbing your leg, what would you do? I got permission from the parents. Of course, some said no. I had the parents sit in there with me. And the parents were so mad at some of the children, the Girl Scouts, about what they would do. Because they came to me and said, I don't know why she went up there and took the cane. I told her never to do that. So we need to tell them, it needs to be age appropriate. You know, if she's 5, you don't need to be talking about all this stuff that we know about. But they need to have a person that they trust to tell if something like that happens. So you tell them, you know, what to do, you know, tell me if anything happens, and tell them what could happen, and then go from there. And make sure to tell them that it's not fault. Let them know it's not your fault that Uncle Tommy gave you a kiss on the cheek. And these are the kind, all that sitting on the lap. I've had a lot of that sitting on the lap bouncing. So those are younger children. And these are things we need to talk about them. Just let them know, come talk to me and talk to them age appropriate. And on the subject matter needs to be appropriate.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Nurse Arnita. Very good. So let's go ahead and as we begin to wind down, let's talk about some different resources, things that individuals can do if they find themselves in a relationship that doesn't feel healthy, or they know of a friend and they're seeing some signs within their own within that friend's relationship. Does anyone have? We can look at it in a couple of ways: general resources, and also resources from Prince George's Community College as well. So I think what I'll do is I'll call on Lieutenant Smith. Is that something that you can speak to a bit in terms of what Prince George's, how Prince George's Community College can offer resources to individuals facing situations like this?
Yes, so for DPS, when someone alerts us and let us know that they find themselves in this situation, of course we talk to them and we try to, get as much information and find out if they're safe at home. If there's children, we do like a screening and ask certain questions, but also talk to them about their options, such as, going to the courthouse, getting a protective order, going to a shelter or other family member's house if they feel safe to do so, and providing, assistance in picking up belongings from the residents, such as a standby, connecting with that jurisdiction, local police department, also to assisting in serving the protective order with the sheriff department or that local jurisdiction as well, and having that on file here on campus and alerting, HR or the other departments and letting that particular student know what they can do when they, arrive on campus, to providing escorts to and from their car to their class. And then also connecting with the other departments here on campus, such as, the Wellness Center, the Domestic Violence Prevention Center, for the additional resources.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Greer, I know you've got something in your cachet about resources, particularly in the county.
Yes, so of course, the Family Justice Center located up in Marlboro is a terrific resource. And I say that not just simply because that's where I'm employed, but because the Family Justice Center, it was established to make it easier for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and elder abuse to actually have access to resources. So with our center, you don't have to go to Department of Social Services all the way in Landover or to all these different places. Everyone is literally located in one building. And so it's much easier. COVID has allowed us to go virtual with most of our services. So it's very easy to get access to services. I do want to say this. A lot of times we come together for these type of outreach and awareness events. And many of us, I'm so thankful for the transparency that was on today, that was on the call today. But I want to talk to those who you may say, this is not my situation. I don't even know why I'm here. You got great information today. And when you know better, you have no other choice but to do better. And so maybe this information was not for you, but you take what you have learned and you go back and you give it to somebody else. And for that person who says, well, yeah, after I've gotten all this information from this presentation, someone does ring a bell to me, someone does come to mind. You now have to give that person the information, but also give them the room to just make their own decision. Never force someone who is in a domestic violence or a teen dating violence situation to make the choice and the decisions that you would make. Be there to support them and be there close enough to allow them to make their own decision. Don't tell them, this is what I would do if I was in your shoes, because the truth is you've never walked a day in their shoes. So just give them the room, give them the space and the support to make their own decision.
Okay, excellent. Well said. Well said. All right. Okay, Giselle, is there anything else from our audience?
There are no more questions in the chat, and there are no hands raised at this moment.
Okay. I do see that there's some discussion in the chat around protective orders. And I would think that, I don't know, Lieutenant Smith, if you have access to the chat, but if you could read through that, perhaps there might be a student who might want to connect with you, perhaps more information on how to feel safe using protective orders.
Yes, sure, not a problem. I'm looking
Okay.
now.
Okay, alrighty. Before we end, just looking at this final slide, again, it says more likely. It doesn't mean that everyone who has a relationship as a teenager that is unhealthy or abusive is going to experience this. But sometimes this can be the side effects, if you will, or the fallout of engaging in these types of relationships. So if you find yourself using substances more, or if you find yourself feeling more sad or more anxious, or if you find yourself changing in a way to where it's not your nature, where you're having to lie and connive and scheme to hide the fact that what you're doing isn't right, then you might want to reach out and speak with someone, either at the Family Justice Center or either here at Counseling Services. And definitely, if any suicidal feelings come to surface, 911, or we've got some hotline, the next slide as well. So I will put the evaluation link one last time in the chat, and feel free to please go ahead and give us your feedback. Panelists, if you'd like to say one last thing before we end, please do so at this time.
I just want to tell everybody to be aware of your surroundings and just the behavior of people, because I've heard that there's a lot of carjacking now, and we just have to be careful. And not only out in the street, but with people that we meet. Don't be so easy to go with somebody because they invite you over, especially over their house. I can't even get into their house situation. And the car. So somebody, if you just meet, you should not be getting in the car with them, because the car is the most dangerous place to go. Just be careful with surroundings, and just talk to the person. You'll be able to discern what's on their mind, because they are very manipulative. So be careful. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurse Arnita. Thank you so much. Okay, it looks like there's one final question in the chat. And the student is asking about support groups. Thank you so much for asking about that. Right now we don't, but it looks like from Ms. Greer, she's saying that the Family Justice Center does. So certainly, definitely get in touch with her. Ms. Greer, would you put your contact information in the chat as well, please? So that if individuals are interested in following up with those types of support groups, they can. And my colleague is on the same wavelength, so great. Thank you, Deval, in the chat. Right, and okay, looks like here.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so at this time, I want to say thank you to all of our participants. Thank you especially to our participants. Your questions, your comments, the way you shared your stories with us, thank you so much. appreciate you being here, and we couldn't have had the type of dialogue that we did without you. Panelists, always great. Thank you, Ms. Greer. Thank you, Lieutenant Smith. Nurse Arnita, good to have you. And DeVal, appreciate you being able to be both a facilitator as well as doing the chat. So very helpful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. At this time, let's see here. Put the evaluation link in there one last time. And with that, I will say thank you and stop the recording and sign off. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the info. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Thank you, Holly Kim. Come back. Oh, you're so welcome, Lieutenant Smith. Thank you. Okay, very good. Righty.